Good morning, YouTube. I'm coming to you from the backyard. Like a lot of you, I'm in quarantine land here. Because of that, I've had a chance to look back through a lot of my videos and rewatch those, trying to remember the good old times. One of the videos I stumbled across was a video I made 5 years ago about my backpacking footwear. And since then, I've been on a lot of trips, been in a lot of different environments and all over the place. And I wanted to update that video. Got some new theories and thoughts on what works best. And then I've probably used, 7 or 8 different shoes since then. So I want to update you on some of those thoughts. So back in 2014, when I did my first video, I had some thoughts and theories around backpacking footwear. And those have mainly remained unchanged. At the time, I was really against Gore-Tex and really against boots, and I still am for the majority of trips that I do. So those are canoe trips, backpacking trips in the Sierras, things like that. In my mind, there's a spectrum of shoes. On one side, you have a rock climbing shoe. On the other side, you have a really squishy shoe. And in that spectrum, there is a myriad of different shoes, and I think you can pick different shoes for different types of applications. So what do I mean by that? On an off-trail, loose trail environment, or like a canoe trip where you're going to be on portages that are rough, I want a certain type of shoe that is different than if I'm going to be logging 20 miles on a groomed trail all day. High mileage stuff like that is going to lend itself more to plush, cushy shoes, and something off-road, technical, borderline rock climbing and scrambling is going to require a different type of shoe. A shoe is just a tool to an end. There is no best shoe. There's maybe the best shoe for the best environment or the best trip, but there's no best shoe in my opinion. So I'm going to start with kind of the ones I use for off-trail type stuff to the ones I use for on-trail type stuff, and then talk about kind of specialty category shoes on top of that. So first up in my review is going to be an approach shoe. If you have like a full-on rock climbing shoe, this is one step down from that. So I've used this in some off-trail hikes and some rock climbing to get to the actual rock climb in the Sierras, and it works really well. So what I've been using is the La Sportiva TC3. This is an approach shoe, which is characterized by its full rubber rand. It's got a climbing zone here in the toe, and it's got like sticky rubber, so rubber compounds really similar to that of a climbing shoe. The shoe is really great. Also, the lacing system goes all the way down to the toe, so that's helpful in getting a really customized comfort fit. I like the shoe. It's pretty good. I wouldn't want to hike like 15 miles in it, as it doesn't have much of a supportive midsole, and it's relatively stiff. I also be careful on the sizing on this. I usually wear a bunch of Salomon shoes, and the La Sportiva, I'm not sure if I got the proper size for this, but it seems to work okay. Also, the heel cup, there isn't much of a heel cup, so sometimes I've had a little bit of heel rub. But durability-wise, it works great. It's a really good shoe if you're going to be doing off-trail, not high-mileage walking type of stuff. So this has been a really good shoe. Next up is kind of middle of the road shoes, so somewhere in between, kind of being a little bit cushy, but still enough to do some kind of edgy stuff off trail and kind of a good overall rounder. This is kind of what I aim for most of my shoes. First up is going to be the Salomon X Ultra. There's also an X Prime, which is pretty much the same thing. It uses a kind of chevron V pattern. I had a previous gen version of this shoe in my last video from 5 years ago, and I think this is the second, no, this is probably the third one of this I've been through. This is like a mainstay good hiking shoe. The Salomon seem to fit my feet pretty well, which are high arch, kind of narrow feet, and I really like this shoe. It's a good mix of cushion, durability, and kind of edging ability. So when I say edging, it's the ability to like put your toe in something small and push off of it, or be able to be stable on a slippy surface like a rock or something like that. This one's got a pretty relatively stiff midsole, but it's still got a little bit of flexion in the toe. Salomon's famous for its quick lacing system, and I actually prefer not having that. I don't know why, but I like the regular shoelaces. I replace this sometimes with 550 cord once it wears out. I've had the speed lace system that Salomon uses. I've had that break on me. And sometimes I've had the little like plastic cam get jammed up with dirt. So I do like just regular laces. One thing I don't like about this shoe is that there's no gusset. So the tongue is independent from the shoe body, which means there's more likelihood of rocks, stones, and dirt getting into it. This is what I used in the Woodland Caribou, so it worked really good. Joe had a very similar shoe like this, which is like a mid-height boot. It dries relatively quick. The mesh is a little bit thicker than most shoes, I would say, which adds to durability, and adds to dry time a little bit. But great shoe, probably one of my go-to if you just had to pick one shoe and I wasn't sure what type of environment I was going to be in. This would be a good, just kind of middle of the road, kind of do everything. So next up in the middle of the pack with just a little bit more cushion and a different tread pattern is the Salomon Speedcross. I think this is a Speedcross 4. They've had a few generations since then. This is a good shoe. It's got the lacing system I was just talking about that I'm kind of okay about. It does have a fully closed gusset, which is nice. And it has, in my opinion, the type of mesh I really like. So it's not as breathable, but it dries relatively quick and it's extremely durable. And it's just kind of like scratchy nylon versus more of like a 3D mesh type of thing. The sole pattern is these kind of really spaced apart chevrons, which work amazingly well on loose dirt going uphill. The problem is this compound is pretty soft, much softer than the other Salomons I have, so the wear is, these wear down pretty quick. They work decently well on wet rock and slippy things just because it's a soft compound, but it feels a little weird because when you have your foot on the rock, sometimes you can feel the little like chevron knobs moving around because they're so big. So this works really good on loose trails and kind of in mixed situations where you might have some mud and stuff like that, and they're relatively durable. They're very lightweight. The only thing I don't like about this shoe a little bit is it has a pretty high stack height in the rear and a relatively low one in the front, so your foot is at an angle like this quite a bit. So it's a good shoe though. Very durable. The upper is very durable. The soles are kind of medium durable. So I've used this one for a lot of day hikes and some light backpacking. But if I'm going on a week-long trip, it's not really a go-to shoe. So on the far end of the spectrum, we've come a long way from an approach shoe. We're going to go all the way to a very cushy type of shoe that I would typically use on a higher mileage type trip. This is the Lone Peak Ultra Lone Peak 4. I've had this shoe now for about 1.5 years or so, and it's starting to show its age for sure. This is the shoe I used with Kelsey last summer in the Sierras, and I've used it on numerous day hikes and small backpacking trips. Also just got back from Hawaii about 3 months ago and used this to do some hiking also. It's a good shoe. It's pretty cushy. It's one of the favorites of people on the PCT, and it's known kind of for its barefoot zero drop. So the difference between the heel and here, there's no drop. It's not like that other Salomon I showed you like this. It's supposed to promote barefoot use. It also has a very or promote natural walking technique, shall we say. And then you have the very wide toe box. I do like the wide toe box. It does feel comfy. It kind of feels like you're wearing a slipper. And the tread pattern is probably one of the best of any shoe. The one thing that they do differently that no one else does is in the middle here they've got these huge lugs that don't seem to wear down, but if you're in mud or going uphill on loose material, these really big lugs on the side do a very good job of grabbing the dirt. It also has the same type of mesh that Salomon Speedcross has, and it's a pretty cushioned shoe. It's not super high volume cushion, but it is, I would say, medium high cushion. Longer miles works well. The laces, I think those wore out. No, they were extremely long. They drove me nuts. They were like 3 feet long, so I replaced it with some 550 cord. Durability wise, these are pretty good. The toe bumper and all the foam in the front is starting to fall apart, so that's getting a little bit annoying. I think it's going to shorten the lifespan, and the tread is wearing down, I would say, faster than some of the Salomon shoes that I've had in the past. This drains really well. It's very durable. The problem is now that we're kind of farther on the squishy factor side, is they don't work the best off trail. So on trail, 20-mile day, sure, great shoe to have. Kind of some mixed conditions, maybe a little bit off-road, no problem. But if I'm going to do some like peak bagging and it's off trail, or I'm hiking up the side of a mountain or whatever, not the shoe. It's very squishy. you have no ability to put your toe on a rock and push off, because this is what's going to happen. And you can't be very precise because the toe box is so much wider than any other shoe. So great for on trail, terrible for off trail. Pretty good overall design. If anyone reads the PCT Gear Report survey, these got slammed pretty hard this year. They've kind of been a mainstay favorite, but I'm a big fan of reading that survey that surveys any PCT hiker that's been through the whole trail, gets off, and then they rate their gear. These had some terrible comments at the end for causing stress problems with people's feet and things like that. I haven't had any problems, but again, I'm not walking 2,200 miles in 4 months or whatever. So yeah, good shoe for me. I don't know if I'm going to replace them with something else, but they've been a good shoe for me so far. So now that we've gone through the kind of the full spectrum from climbing shoe to squishy shoe, let's talk about some specialty random shoes I've picked up and used. First are these Salomon water shoes. They compress to nothing. They don't really have any top factor to them. They have some sipes in the sole, and I got these mainly as like a camp footwear alternative, or to go to the beach and like walk around, things like that. Not a huge fan of these. They're pretty terrible. They're very lightweight, but they have my biggest problem with it, I'm never buying a shoe like this again, is they have the sole here, and then the midsole fabric is cut out, or the midsole foam is cut out. And for whatever reason, when my foot is walking on it, I get this terrible pain in my heel because there's no support, and it kind of gets pinched in this middle zone as my foot presses down on it. So these shoes are pretty terrible. I don't wear them very often. Salomon Aqua shoes, why did you put this cutout in the shoe? It does nothing and it hurts my foot. Don't do that. So next up, another specialty shoe is a blast from the past, which is my Merrell barefoot shoe. This is actually the same pair of shoes that I had in my video from 5 years ago. I do wear these quite a bit, and I'm surprised they haven't worn out. The sole is basically flat, there's nothing left, but the upper is still good to go. I don't use these for hiking. I usually use them as a gym shoe, or they're my go-to canoe camp footwear. They work great for that because you can compress them like this, and they fit really good at the very bottom of a portage pack, and then you just load all your stuff up on top of it and compresses it. But they've held up remarkably well. I have had to use a significant amount of shoe goo to keep the sole on, and I probably just need to replace these things and buy another one. But these have been really good. May bring these as a camp footwear on a backpacking trip, depending on how high speed, low drag I wanted to go. But they're for my canoe trips where I don't care quite as much about weight. These are really comfortable. They used to have pretty decent traction. Now the traction is completely worn off, so not the best. But they're a really good shoe. It's very lightweight. They dry relatively quickly, and I really do like them as a camp footwear for canoe trips. Next up is foot care accessories. I'm still a big believer that when I roll into camp at night, to clean and dry my feet and then apply some like waterproofing agent to them, even if I'm not in a wet area, which I seem to always be walking through snowfields and or through lakes and swamps and stuff and canoe trips, so my feet are almost always wet. It's rare I get a whole day where my feet aren't wet. I have switched from using Bonnie's Balm, which doesn't exist anymore as far as I can tell, to something called Badger Foot Balm. This stuff works pretty good. I don't carry around this big can. I use this little tiny plastic thing. I think it's the same exact plastic case I was using 5 years ago. So it's held up. This is enough usually for about 5 to 7 days. And I just take out a little dollop on my foot, make sure my feet are clean and dry, rub them in, and it kind of waterproofs them, regenerates them, and hydrates the foot properly. So that's a big thing that really helps my feet from not getting blisters, cracks, and other problems. I'm a big fan of doing that. On the subject of accessories, another thing I sometimes bring, it would be a camp shoe. I used these in my last video, which these were the Arc'teryx Maddox dry socks, which I don't know if they make anymore, but other companies make Gore-Tex socks. It's hard to say. It looks like a Christmas stocking. It's made out of Gore-Tex. They weigh about 5.5, 6 ounces, something like that, I think, for the two. And that allows you then to get into camp, dry your feet out, lotion them up, put socks on, put those on, the dry socks, and then put them back into your wet trail runners, so that way you're not having to carry two different pairs of shoes. They work pretty good. You can alternatively use plastic bags, which are probably a little bit lighter. They won't breathe and as quite as well as the Gore-Tex, but you could do that also. I've done it before. One thing I haven't tried yet, but I'm going to try this summer, is these little cheapo water shoes I got off Amazon for like $8, I think. They have like a very light mesh upper and then this very basic toe pattern. And as you can see, for the two of them, you can't get much thinner than that. They weigh about 7 or 8 ounces. So they're a little bit lighter than my Merrell Barefoots, but not a ton. So I'm not fully sold that these are the way to go, but I'll try them out this spring and summer and see how I like them. Final note on accessories. When I first wrote my video, I was using the Defeat Wooliator socks. These are like a wool synthetic nylon blend, and I've used these forever. I had about 12 pairs of these, and I'm probably not going to buy these anymore, and that's due to their durability. The bottoms hold up pretty good, but I get this terrible separation in between the top knit part and the bottom of the sock. There's this hole kind of right where your Achilles tendon is that just opens up and gets huge when these shoes get some wear on them. So they don't seem to last that long. I've kind of been unimpressed, but I've just been burning through my stock of those, and I'll probably be, I think I only have like 2 pairs of those left. What I much prefer that I use as my kind of day-to-day sock is the Darn Tough Tactical Black Socks. These things are like indestructible. I thought it was a marketing gimmick until about 2 years ago when I bought some, and I have yet to wear through a pair in 2 years, and I rotate through 5 of them for my daily wear all the time, and they work great. They're very comfortable, they dry fast, they work great for backpacking trips. So I think as my Wooliators, my Defeat Wooliator socks run out, I will replace them with more Darn Tough black tactical socks. Those work really good. Another item I'm still using are my gaiters. These are made out of a stretchy material. They velcro around your ankles, and they have a little hook that clips onto your shoelaces. Makes it so that dirt and debris don't go into your shoe. They're not meant to be waterproof. I don't wear waterproof shoes, so they don't keep water out, but they do keep dirt and debris. I use them on most of my trips, and I seem to have cleaner feet at the end of the day and have to stop less to take rocks out of my shoes. Especially helpful in off-trail situations where you're going either through like swamps or in like talus fields where there's a bunch of loose rock and shale and stuff like that. Just prevents you from having to take your shoe off multiple times and clean your feet throughout the day. So helpful tool, and they weigh pretty much next to nothing. So to wrap things up, I would encourage people to think about shoes on a spectrum again. So really hardcore, good for off-road, to really squishy shoes. And depending on your trip, think of it as a different tool. You're not going to use a screwdriver when you need a hammer. So different shoes work in different environments and for different surfaces. And yeah, sure, will this shoe work over here? Probably, but will you be the most comfortable? Probably not. So I think it's kind of fun too to try different shoes, different compounds, things of that nature. So for the 2020 backpacking season, there's 2 different shoes I'm interested in trying out. One would be the Salomon X Alpine Pro. It's kind of a good fusion of some of the features of the Speedcross, so like that upper mesh I really like. And it's also kind of a fusion of the La Sportiva because it has a climbing zone, and then it's got kind of an aggressive tread pattern kind of in the middle. So I think that's a really good all-arounder. It's meant for like alpine scramble running. So it's a little bit more padded of an approach shoe, and it's a little bit more technical than a running shoe. So it's kind of this interesting fusion blend right in the middle, and I think that'll work really, really well for trips where I want to walk, do a 20-30 mile loop, but at the same time I want to throw in a couple of off-trail peak type of things. I think that'd be a really good all-around mountain shoe, so I'm interested in that. The other one that has really, really good reviews and got awesome praise on the PCT Gear Survey from 2019 last year was the Hoka Speed Goat. That's a super cushion. That's like far on the spectrum, 2 to 3 notches more than my Ultras that I have. So I'm curious to try the Speed Goat out and again, this season's kind of up in the air right now, so who knows. But if we end up going for some high mileage trips, something where it's just 15, 20 miles a day on trail, a few thousand feet, go, go, go type of thing, I think having a really squishy, full, big shoe like that that's still relatively lightweight, I think would be really a good way to go. So I'll be trying that out. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments. Again, I'm not a professional backpacker, just Joe Schmo weekend warrior here. Those are some of my thoughts. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.